Hi, I'm Jason Osterkamp. I'm owner and operator of EO7 Media. At EO7 Media, we empower businesses by providing tailored marketing strategies and creative content solutions, guiding them towards brand success in a cluttered digital landscape. Logan Reed has reached out to me and asked if I could answer some of the questions for a website he is creating all about generative AI. We use generative AI all the time at my work. In fact, remember that intro that I just did? At EO7 Media, we empower businesses by providing tailored marketing strategies and creative content solutions, guiding them towards brand success in a cluttered digital landscape. Yeah, ChatGPT wrote that. Now, here's what's most important, and it's going to be an ongoing theme with almost all of the questions. Generative AI is a tool. That's really what it is. For instance, yes, I did have ChatGPT write the intro, but I also wrote many paragraphs of information, and I had ChatGPT ask me numerous days worth of questions to get to know my business over the course of probably a month to really understand who my business is, what we do, and what we actually offer to people, not just something generic. And it might have sounded generic, but you know what? It hit all the points perfectly. In short, I had to train the AI to think the way I think. And truth be told, it's probably about 40% there. It's missing a lot. And that's after 30 days of working on this every day. I don't expect it to be great yet, but another year of me working on this every day? Yeah, I expect it to be better. Honestly, I expect it to be about 50%, maybe 60%. It's not a bad stepping stone. If I keep working on it, we're going to get closer, just like AI does. So, as these questions progress, you're going to hear a constant theme of me thinking AI is a tool, one to be used correctly. Let's dive in. How has generative AI helped you? Why do you use generative AI? Many shoots that we do don't go as perfectly planned. And I will say that is the truth for the entire video industry. Unfortunately, things almost never go exactly how they're supposed to go. Things go over time. A person will walk by in the background. A light will go out. Something will happen on a set that makes you have to fix it somehow, whether that be reshooting it and taking more time of the client's time. And every moment we are on set with a client, we are billing that time. So we are extremely conscientious of a client's budget and the parameters of what we can do, not only on the set with the client for the client, but also what we can do possibly afterwards. For example, we just did a shoot in Hawaii where we shot at a car repair location. When you do a video shoot, everyone has to sign a waiver to make sure that the people in the video are okay and legally responsibly giving us the right to show the video or wherever the company will be showing it. And one person refused to sign the waiver. So they wore a mask and they did not want to be in the video. Unfortunately, when the crew was filming this one shot, and we had another camera person filming the shoot, they got everyone together to do like a group pose. And that one person who didn't want to be in the video stood right in the middle in the back. And this posed a problem because the client didn't want them in the video at all, so they wanted to blur the face. Now, blurring the face is absolutely doable. It's very quick. However, doing this is going to cause more of a distraction to the audience. By blurring his face, you make the audience question, why is that person being blurred out? And therefore, you're taking them out of the moment in an otherwise a B2C type of business, a business to consumer type of business, meaning they are selling a product or a service to the masses, you don't want them to question. You don't want them to leave the mindset that you are the best at what you do. So I proposed what we do is we mask that individual out, and then in Photoshop, I use generative AI to create a similar background to what was in the garage. And I put that back into Premiere Pro, and then I masked the tracking of the front image with the new back image, the generative AI. And as the camera moved in, I had the back image move the same way. And if you look really closely, you can see where the errors are. However, the client didn't have the budget or the time to do this really well. And in a very quick shot, I thought it turned out pretty decently. Generative AI is done in most of my work, mostly just to take things out that either we didn't notice while filming or stuff that we couldn't really help while filming. For example, if we're filming a beautiful new showroom for a company and there's a garbage can in the back, typically you don't want to see the garbage cans because that gives an icky feeling to your audience. So we want to take those out. In photo, this is much easier. In video, it's a little bit harder, but it is getting there pretty soon. In written aspects, I use generative AI a lot. For example, on our website, I come up with a base of an idea for a blog post, and I find my facts, I find all my information, and then I ask a ChatGPT to write this blog post up. And of course, ChatGPT is in its infancy right now, and I believe most generative AI is in its infancy, and it shows. The written aspects are really crappy. I will pick and choose certain aspects that I do like, and I'll rewrite the entire piece, but using some of the aspects that I've got out of ChatGPT. And that saves time. And if I can save time doing the things that I need to do in order to take care of my clients better, I'm absolutely going to take advantage of this. And I think that's what most of my interview here is going to be about, is I highly believe that generative AI is a tool, and a tool needs to be learned, discussed, and used by the right people. It harks back to the old theory of the hammer doesn't build the table. The carpenter wielding the hammer builds the table. I've seen amateurs, for lack of a better term, use very expensive camera gear like Aris or Reds, very high-end cameras, and their films look like garbage. At the same time, I've seen people use very low-end cameras and make marvelous pieces of magic because the tool doesn't matter as much as the person behind it. And that's the exact same thing as generative AI. Just because the AI exists doesn't mean the AI is going to be perfect because it exists. You still need the person driving it, behind it, wielding that hammer to make the table. Sure, generative AI can possibly build a table, but is it a table that you'll be proud of? Is it a table that is expensive looking, that feels, that actually lasts time? It might not. But it all depends on the person who's writing the code and who makes the art, rather than the AI itself. So overall, how has generative AI helped me? It has helped me clean up an incident that was beyond our control. It helps us save time for the client and thereby getting us more work with them. And it saves me time springboarding some ideas, but not fully fleshing them out, allowing me to, again, save a little bit of time and focus on what's more important for my business. What are your thoughts on what bigger companies will do with generative AI? I believe bigger companies will use shortcuts to not help the consumer as much as their bottom line. If you have a bigger company, typically there's a lot more at stake than a smaller company like ours. You have a lot more people's well-being to worry about. Not only that, but then you have shareholders or a board of trustees, or you have a lot of other cooks in a kitchen trying to make sure that the money is going to foster the growth of the business more so than actually helping the consumer. Yes, it is always in the mind of any business to be good and help a consumer, but I believe bigger companies will look at generative AI as a way to bypass some aspects, whether that be writing, whether that be copy, whether that be content creation, photo, video, things like that. I don't think there's inherently anything wrong with this, but I do think companies are thinking, hey, instead of paying someone X amount where we would pay before, now we can pay far less and still looks good to me, but in actuality, it might not be. Generative AI is only as good as the person writing the commands to create those things. For example, if I'm sitting here and I type in castle on a hill, this is the image we get. It's generic, it's okay, but it's not exactly what I had in mind. Now, if I sit here and type in a castle resting upon a hill, covered in ivy in the morning sunrise, circled by fairy lights, hyper-realistic, medieval, with a dragon circling the sky above, period. That's more like the castle I was thinking in my head. I think some companies definitely will flood the market with subpar content just to have the content finished and the dollar saved. However, in order to be good content, you still have to have people helping along the way. You still have to have the artists who are guiding, who understand theory, who understand why things work. Having the know-how, knowing the why, is almost as important as the skill. Because if you just have skill and you don't know the why things work the way they work, then you're just creating the castle on the hill. But if you can understand the branding and the ideals and the concepts and the deeper conceptual critical thinking and the theories involved with while creating art for a specific reason, then you have more of the castle with the dragon. So yes, I do think bigger companies will probably use AI as a crutch more so than a tool. How will generative AI affect you in the future? I think AI has a lot of possibilities of positives and some negatives in our future. For the negatives, we're going to lose some work. We're going to lose some actual video production work, whether that be editing and shooting or just shooting. I've seen some AI videos being created right now that are jaw-droppingly gorgeous, and that takes money out of my pocket. However, I've seen some people try to make AI videos and just fail miserably, and therefore not turning out the way they initially designed the video to be. And I think that's what's going to be hands down the most important aspect, is just because you can create doesn't mean you're going to be creating the right thing for your client. In our case, we work with clients who have brand identities. Everything we shoot, everything we create needs to match their brand identity so it matches their marketing. For positive aspects of this, what we can use in the future, AI is going to give us a giant toolkit of things that were unavailable to us in the past. For instance, masking out that individual at the garage, that probably took about an hour and a half to get that 3-second clip. In the future, that might just be a click of the button. It might be that simple. Another great way that we've been using AI recently is we have hour-long podcast between 3 cameras, and I have an AI program that literally will cut back and forth depending on who's talking. So as long as I'm not looking for a good edit, something that is truly meaningful through the edits and using theory and critical thinking, if I'm just looking for something that's easy to get out there and it is not going to be viewed as this is the production quality of our work, but rather just content for the sake of content, which, let's be honest, a lot of companies do this, then it's great, because That little software right there cuts my time down from about 8 hours to about 5 minutes. Therefore, I can use that save time to make that video even better by adding graphics or B-roll or lots of other content. Or I can make a better thumbnail to hopefully get more viewers. Or I can advertise the video more instead of just hoping people find it online. I think also it's going to allow us, our business specifically, to create things we couldn't before. And I think that's going to be even cooler for people who don't have the means like we do. They don't have the camera gear that I do, or the lighting, or the audio equipment. They don't have this stuff, but they're still an artist. I think this is very similar to the 1960s and 1970s when independent film started to become a real thing. You started seeing truly groundbreaking, wonderful ideas put on film. Even if they weren't visually beautiful to look at, they were amazing because it was questioning what's come before. It was opening the world to novice filmmakers who didn't have the money to be a part of the Hollywood system, but rather just had the ability to pick up a camera and start making a film. This is why in the 80s there was such a boom of VHS tapes in rental houses, because the VHS camera became a real thing. It became a tangible thing that someone could buy, and you could make your own movie. It's giving the ability to create art to the masses. In recent years, in the past 20 years, technology has become infinitely even easier. For example, you can shoot an entire film on your phone. The only thing that's literally holding you back is your own motivation and your creativity. So if I have a phone, I can create something that was unthought of 60 years ago. So allowing people to have the ability to create art and to create stories where they just didn't have the finances or the technological know-how of renting a film camera, knowing how to thread the film, knowing how to process the film, blah, 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 blah. You are giving the tools to the masses, and you are going to see a giant boom of new concepts and new creativity. Can generative AI be copyrighted? AI in general is not created in a void. AI does not just exist. It has to learn. Similar to how I educated ChatGPT to understand what we do as a business, so that if I ask it a question like, using the EO7 database, please create one sentence explaining what we do as a business and how we help other businesses. Having the month of time that I put into this database with ChatGPT, it's learned what we do and what we offer and our overall tonality of how we express that to clients and to the public. AI has to be taught. It has to grow. It has to learn. For instance, Midjourney, I believe, took 3 or 4 years of just shoving every image they could find at it, so it learned what things are. And when you type in something like castle on a hill, it will find something that's labeled castle. It doesn't think what would be a castle. It says this is a castle. The prompts, the keywords you use, make all the difference in the world. So can these be copywritten? Kinda. Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes, the original stories, is in public domain. And by being in public domain, the copyright means that anyone can use those stories or the characters as they will. H.P. Lovecraft is the same way. Walt Disney's Steamboat Willie literally just came into the public domain. Public domain allows future generations to remix, reauthor, and recreate and reinvigorate a beloved story, or any story, into the masses so that new generations can enjoy it. How do you think Disney exists? Nearly every single animated film that Disney releases is someone else's story. Since it is in public domain, or they just bought the copyrights, or in the Lion King's case, borrowed, they allow the world to see a new interpretation of that story. Tarzan, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, all these stories were old books that have been told throughout the generations, and now we get to see it in an animated cartoon. That's pretty great. I think having the copyright of generative AI is similar in argument to rehashing old concepts similar to public domain. The problem with this is photographers are seeing their watermarks inside some photos. And technically, that's theft. If you are using someone else's photos to remix, you should be giving credit to those artists. If you remix a song and put it into your new song and sell your song as a new song, sure, you definitely can. You can create copyright for that. However, you should give credit to that original piece. This is where I think a lot of things are going to be tricky, because I don't think most of the AI scraping software is taking into account the credits for who these images belong to. And I think the credits are going to be way too long per piece in order to justify that need or that want to do this. So can it be copywritten? I definitely see an argument for it, but I also see a reparation necessary in order to feed that information to a new tool to create new work from it. Do I see that reparation being payment? Maybe not. Credit, I think, is important, but copyright is a delicate language because it's a legal language. And if it's in copyright, that means it can fall out of copyright. And it can be held in court against other copyright or copyright infringement. So I don't think that is a cut and dry answer. I think that is something that needs to be highly debated and debated well. Is AI stealing art or using it as a reference like artists do? This is actually a fantastic question. This is something very similar to the copyright thing. I don't believe that AI generated art is similar to using references to traditional art creation. I believe that in order to be a reference, it is just that. I can look at this can and draw this can over here without placing this can or this image of this can into the new image. However, with a generative AI source, I am taking the image of this can and I am placing that image into this new image. I think this is a really great topic. Which aspect? What dictates stealing? What dictates reference? Because you can argue that taking a photo of a still life is stealing. You're stealing that image. However, art changes, communication changes, language changes, civilizations change. While we can always have some kind of core that remains the same, and you can always say that things don't really change, they do. They absolutely do. For instance, 200 years ago, taking a photo might have been considered stealing a soul or stealing something because you are literally capturing a moment in time. Some people today still think that if I'm taking a photo outside and get their house in the background, that's stealing. Legally, it's not. If you are out on the street and I am filming on the street, if I am filming for my own personal home movies for fun of, let's say, a tourist video that I'm just gonna watch with my family, then I don't have to worry about much. But the moment this is done for profit, whether you make money or not, profit does not always mean you make money. The moment that video is done for profit, then the rule changes. If I'm walking down the street in another country because I'm a tourist and I'm filming people walking by me, the moment I have the intent to use that video for any type of profitable means, meaning if I put that up on YouTube and I am selling ads or YouTube is using ads, or if I use that footage in a video for a client, every single person in that video, I have to legally get a waiver for. This can be argued as all things in law can be gray. Bringing this back to, is it stealing or reference? I think there's definitely more stealing than referential, because these AI scrapers are scraping all websites who have probably not agreed to have this software capture their images and be used for other means. For instance, if I have a bunch of photos on my website of my clients, I absolutely did not give anyone the authority that they can use those images in their own images. That is copyright infringement and punishable by law. So how is that different than an AI scraper taking an image and using it differently? But it is. It's remixing, and this just goes back and forth. This is a great question. What are your thoughts? Are people who use generative AI artists, and should they be able to sell their work? This is another gray area question, because I think it depends on how much you use AI in your art. For example, if I type in Venom from Marvel on the side of a building and I just want to sell this piece of art, I don't think you should be able to. However, so if I were to create something like a gremlin sitting on the shelf, that really doesn't provide any type of contextual win for the quote unquote artist, because literally you are just taking someone else's art and remixing it without a lot of remixing. To me, this is very similar to cutting out a magazine article and putting that on a separate piece of paper and then saying it's yours. Technically, you are remixing it. This is why this is a good question, because there are gray matters here. There are shades of gray. So if I were to say something like, take a picture like this, and I say, gremlin sitting on the shoulder eating a cookie, the grand majority of that image is an image that I created, but I added another IP. So that still is copyright infringement because I am using someone else's IP in my art. Now, let's say you don't use IP. Let's say you do something totally original, like a castle on a hill. Should I be able to sell that? Some might argue yes. I would argue that no, but I do use this kind of stuff in my work, which is for profit. However, when I do so, I do it very minimally, and I do it with images I've already created. So for instance, that video of the group waving at the camera, I created a AI background that was not there, that was probably used from other businesses' garages, that we'll never see a dime of that. Should I be able to sell that image in an image that I created? I think yes, because 95% of that image is mine. It is my copyrighted image, and I am using the general idea of what's in that image to feed the creation of a new image from parts that have been scraped from other images. At that point, I do believe that can be sold. Yes. However, I think if you're doing any type of IP or any type of full piece, you are not allowed to sell the work. I bring that image into Photoshop, I change things around, I add photos, I add other photo elements, I make layers upon layers upon layers. If I just make a image in a generative AI as it is, I don't believe that should be sold, or the ability to sell or own. I believe that you have to be able to tweak it afterwards a number of times, whether that be a specific number or not. I believe, because that's going to open up a whole can of worms, because if you just tweak one little corner of the image 100 times, it's not going to mean anything. But by changing it enough, changing it significantly, using it with your photos, using it with your drawings, using it with your art, I believe in conjunction, yes, I believe it can be altered enough to be used for sale. And here's the question that really made me want to do the video to begin with. I read all these questions, and while some of them were very thought-provoking and debatable and very hard to type out, I believe that video needs to be used for this question. Will AI take artist jobs? Short answer, yes. Very similar to the way photographers' jobs took sculptors' jobs. Very similar to the way filmmakers took jobs from vaudeville. I think with every new technological step that humans make, we are not only, yes, cutting off some of the past, but we are creating vastly more opportunities and jobs. While I do think AI will take away some artist jobs, for example, let's say a round number of 1,000 jobs. Let's say 1,000 jobs have been taken away from AI. I think that we are not thinking what will come next. Not a lot of films were being made in December 1895. So when the Lumiere brothers were making their films, they probably weren't thinking of the 2,000 or 3,000 jobs a blockbuster film can give, or graphic effects, or colorists, or film timers, or editors, or set designers, or second camera assistants, or grips, or entire businesses like microphone companies like Shure, or lights, or film schools. They were thinking about making a movie, and people were thinking, that's going to take away jobs. This new technology is going to take jobs away from X. So let's say a nice round number of 1,000 people have lost their jobs to AI. With the advent of AI and the advent of a new technology, especially in a creative realm, it's going to give birth to 10, 20,000 jobs. Just like the Lumiere brothers, just like photography did, just like painting did. Every time there's a new step in technology, advancements in entertainment, people fear for their jobs, for their job security. Yes, if you are the kind of person who is happy with the status quo because this is how it's always been, and I will do my job the same way it's been done since day one, and I've been working this job for 40 years, and nothing should change, then yes, you should be worried. But for everybody else who can adapt, who can roll, who can shift, who can think, who can grow, you're going to see AI as a tool. And a tool by itself is just something that gathers dust. But a tool in the hands of someone who's ambitious, creative, wanting to make something, well, that tool is a magic wand. And people fear magic. They always have. Magic has been talked about since the dawn of human existence, and people always fear it for what it can do because it changes. It adapts. It makes something new. because it's not the way things have always been. It's not the same old thing. People fear this, but if you know how to use that wand to build a table, you're going to be just fine. Because not only will you have a job, but there's going to be tons more. And it's going to open up whole new worlds of possibilities that we don't know yet. Right now, we're only thinking about what we actually know. Art, films, music, movies, photos, games. This isn't 1/10 of what's going to come next. And the beauty is we don't know. The beauty is that things change. Humans change. Communication changes. Language changes. We evolve. We evolve from what has been to what we know is into what we don't know. And isn't that the greatest thing of all? Finding that next thing, thinking about it, wondering how, wondering why. Because if you can understand theory, if you can understand a little bit of critical analysis, a little bit of critical thinking, whatever's going to come next is going to blow everything you know out of the water. It's a good time to be here. It's a good time to watch this. And it's a good time to have a future in art. So the overall, is it good or bad? Just like most things in life, there is no definitive correct, right, 100% answer for this. There are shades of gray to everything. And this is absolutely no exception. Yes, there are elements of AI being less than great, but there are so many more elements of it being wonderful, of it being usable and functional and a tool for people to use. One of my favorite stories I ever heard, kind of dealing with this mindset, was a friend who went to go help a very poor community in a very poor part of Michigan. And he showed him what he could do with a tablet to create a 3D world in an abandoned lot. And all the kids there who lived very impoverished lives, they didn't have access to tools like this. They didn't have access to technology. So as he was showing these kids how he could build a 3D real building in this lot, in this broken down, burnt out, dead lot in Detroit, it was the kids who would suggest things to him that he didn't even ponder or think. Like he had no concept of how important some of these things can be. These kids were introducing ideas to this building that just weren't on the radar of what he thought this community needed. And these kids, for the first time, were given an opportunity to really think, to wonder, to create. So they were given the opportunity to create a building in their neighborhood that could change their lives and the lives of their families and friends and community. When you give a tool to the masses, yes, you will see downfalls, but you know what? Man, you're going to see so much greatness. You're going to see so many concepts and theories and thoughts and designs and beautiful ideas that never would have seen the light of day. Because so many people don't have access to tools. And that's all AI is. It's a tool. So I see a very bright future. And I would say easily my teeter-totter of weighing definitely weighs in the good versus the bad. But is it 100%? No, of course not. Nothing ever is. So yeah, I think we're going to see a bright future harnessing AI as a tool.